Cosplay contests are already stressful enough before you even reach the stage, but once you're on stage, what are you supposed to do, especially if you're just doing a walk-on? Well, let's go over it. So I'm going to tell you at least what works for me and what I like to do, and usually what I try to tell people when I'm running cosplay contests to help give them a better base to then build upon. So this is just going to be kind of covering the basics of being on stage. So to go over at least the bare minimum basics, let's talk about stage direction. So this will be helpful no matter what, whether it's in an actual theater or just on a stage set up in a hall. It's useful to know and is a theater basic. It's pretty much the first thing you learn when you get into doing theater. So when it comes to stage direction, you're gonna have the stage itself, the wings on either side, and then usually an apron or an orchestra pit. Sometimes they can be interchangeable or it might not be there at all. So that is what comprises of the stage and the areas that you'll most likely end up interacting with the most. So pretty much the first thing you learn once you're on a stage in a theater is the different directions. So you'll have upstage, which is towards the back of the stage, downstage, which is towards the audience or the apron. Then you'll have stage left, which from the audience perspective is going to be on the right. And then you'll have stage right, which from the audience perspective will be on the left. But when you're on stage, it'll be your left and right. So that's why it seems backwards from an audience perspective, but it makes it easier for when you're on stage. Now, the main thing I want to talk about are paths of travel. So when you are on stage, you are constantly traveling. So what I like to do is discern 3 spots. And if you run a masquerade, please put down tape, indicators or somewhere. It will really help your contestants. I promise you, it is so worth it, especially if you want them to be in the best spot to be seen, not just by the audience, but getting good stage photos. It helps so much for contestants to know a good spot to land. So when it comes to paths of travel, I like to keep in mind at least 3 spots. Oftentimes I will have a 4th in mind, depending on how much time I get to be on stage. For me, paths of travel help determine how much time I end up spending on stage. If I am trying to get on and off stage quickly, if I'm only given like 30 seconds to a minute, I'm gonna hit my 3 spots differently, where I'm gonna hit the nearest one first, then the center, then the furthest one, and then depending on where my exit is, just going through my exit from there. If I get a lot of time on stage, I'm going to go from my entrance point to the furthest point, which if I'm entering from stage right, I'm gonna be on and aiming for stage left. Then from there, I'll aim to go past my center point to stage right, and then from there go center. And if I have enough time, I will walk upstage and do something there. I have already uploaded my ALA 2023 walk-on entrance, which I did end up winning an award for, but I made that all up during dress rehearsal. I'm not even gonna lie. I just figured out how big the stage was, how long I needed to be on stage, and used and organized my path of travel to accommodate that. So path of travel will help you eat up more time for you to be on stage and be seen. Now, the main thing to keep in mind when using paths of travel on stage is where your entrance and exit are. Some stages only have one on and off point. So for that, I call it doing a lasso, where you're just gonna kind of do a loop and you want to still hit the 3 points. So when hitting those 3 points, you want to stop and pose. See what little kind of mind trick you need to do in order to keep yourself in that pose, in that spot, for longer than you think you need, because it's gonna feel like it's forever, but it's gonna be barely half a second. So make sure to be there. You don't have to be completely just in a strict pose, but do small movements, give yourself some motion, but try and hold yourself in that spot, because people are going to want to take pictures of you, and I promise you want those pictures. So just try to hold it at each point. Something I like to do is I will do kind of like a vocal warm-up, like tongue twister in my head. Usually I'm saying to myself, who washed Washington's white woolen underwear when Washington's washerwoman went west? Or a cup of proper coffee in a copper coffee cup. Those are my favorites, but usually the washerwoman gets the gig since she takes up more time. And it gives me, even though it only takes me a few seconds to say, even in my mind, that's a few seconds longer than I'm standing on stage. If you are able to choose your own music, work with your music to count out at what point do you leave your spot. That way you can portion it out, you can help keep track. It'll help you when moving to the different points so that you don't get lost. Now, if a stage has a entrance and an exit, to me, my preferred method is I will enter from one side and I'll do kind of like a little diamond shape of I will go to that furthest point, then I'll go to the either center or the next furthest, and then whatever point I didn't go to second, I'll go to third, and then I will make my entrance off. So I will always try to do the longest point of travel, so it helps me stay on stage longer. Now, in the diagram that I've shown, if you notice, the stars that are marking my center, left, and right are very forward on the stage, and that's intentional. If I know a lot of us will try to gravitate to being in the middle of the stage, but if you're too far back from your audience, not only will you appear smaller, but you'll be harder to see, more details will be lost, especially if it's not in a traditional theater that has the audience sloped. So I would recommend being as forward as you can, but not so far forward you are risking falling off the stage. That's the last thing anyone wants, is you falling off the stage. It's not a fun experience. I don't recommend it. Now, what I've been describing has primarily been a individual walk-on example, but the same kind of positions of stars can still help with a group. So what you can do is kind of do like the fashion show version where everyone takes turns on different points depending on how many members you have. What's fun about that is that while everyone's changing position, you can interact in character with your fellow like group members, and it also is very visually interesting and holds an audience very well. And my main thing to do with the group is that everyone just is moving about, doing their poses, taking their turns, not really coming to center until towards the end where you can get that full group pose and hold that for twice as long as you would hold any other pose, because that's where you're going to get that loud applause. That's where you're going to get everyone wanting to take your picture. I don't have too much to say on the topic just because I typically don't do a lot of skits, but applaud anyone who is able to do full skits. I love it. They're fascinating. What I do see a lot of and see from like my point of view, as someone who's experienced theater and also been to a lot of contests, competed in them, and judged them, make sure that when you are on stage, you're again kind of more forward on the stage. Don't be too far back. It'll be harder to see for everyone. But also, if you are talking to someone, it's normally called like cheating out, where you just kind of want to keep yourself at a 45-degree angle so that you are not fully sideways. Sure, you might be talking to someone right next to you, but you don't want your whole body facing them, because then it kind of cuts out part of the audience, especially if it's a wide venue and you have audience all the way over. You don't want to cut them out of it and being able to see things. So just keep yourself open to your audience, not like full direct on. You had a nice like 45. And just, it helps with kind of keeping that illusion that they are viewing this, that they are part of this. And just remember that everyone kind of gets anxious when it comes to being on stage. I get anxious every single time, even if I am confident in what I know, what I'm doing, I still get anxious. So it is perfectly normal and acceptable to feel that way. And just don't put too much stress on yourself for the sake of competition or cosplay. So if you don't feel comfortable going on stage, you genuinely do not have to. So those are all my thoughts when it comes to being on stage as far as the basics. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe, like, comment. I'm Mina. I go by Cosplaytology. I have been a cosplayer for 16 years and a licensed cosmetologist. Hopefully these videos become regular. If you like it, let me know.